The roar of the crowd turned into a deafening chorus of boos as Richard stood on the penalty spot, the ball at his feet, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. In that single moment, everything he had fought to keep hidden for years was laid bare for the world to see. But the outcome that followed would shatter every expectation and change his life in ways he never imagined. It was supposed to be the biggest game of the season for New York United. The stadium pulsed with 50,000 fans under the bright lights of MetLife, the air thick with the smell of fresh-cut grass and hot dogs. Richard, 28, captain and star striker, had carried the team to the playoffs with his lightning speed and pinpoint accuracy. Teammates slapped his back in the tunnel, the coach nodded with quiet pride, and the media had crowned him the face of American soccer's future. Yet beneath the captain's armband and the million-dollar contract, Richard carried a secret heavier than any trophy. For 2 years he had loved Edward, the man who had become his anchor since their college days at NYU. They had met in a literature seminar where Edward, a quiet English major who later became a high school teacher, had challenged Richard's guarded worldview with gentle questions and easy laughter. What started as late-night study sessions and weekend hikes outside the city slowly deepened into something neither could deny. Edward's Brooklyn apartment became their sanctuary, simple dinners, quiet talks, hands brushing under the table. "When you're ready, I'll still be here," Edward always said, his green eyes steady and patient. Richard believed him, but the world of professional sports demanded perfection and traditional strength. He had watched other athletes lose endorsements, contracts, and respect the moment rumors surfaced. So they stayed invisible. That morning, however, the secret detonated. A tabloid dropped leaked photos of the two of them kissing outside a quiet Italian restaurant in Queens. The source, a former teammate traded last season and nursing a grudge, had sold the images for quick cash. By kickoff, the news dominated every sports feed. Fans arrived already split. Some wore rainbow stickers in support. Others chanted slurs that echoed off the concrete. Richard tried to block it out during warm-ups, but the whispers from his own bench stung. One veteran defender muttered, "Didn't know we had a fairy leading us," loud enough for half the locker room to hear. Richard clenched his jaw and focused on the grass. The game stayed tense, locked at 1-1. Every time Richard touched the ball, the boos swelled, a wave that drowned out the cheers. His passes felt heavy, his runs labored. In the 89th minute, a reckless tackle inside the box sent him sprawling. The referee pointed to the spot. The stadium erupted, half in protest, half in desperate hope. Richard placed the ball, wiped sweat from his brow, and glanced toward the stands where Edward sat, face pale, hands clasped so tight his knuckles showed white. Their eyes met for one heartbeat. That look carried every late-night fear, every whispered promise, every moment they had chosen love over safety. Richard took 3 steps back, drew a breath that tasted like metal, and ran. The ball left his foot with perfect spin. The ball rocketed into the top corner before the goalkeeper even moved. For one impossible second, the entire stadium went silent, as if someone had hit mute on 50,000 voices. Then the roar returned, but it was different, confused, shifting, uncertain. Teammates swarmed Richard, but their hugs felt cautious, like they were embracing a live wire. He pulled away quickly, scanning the stands again. Edward was on his feet, tears cutting tracks down his cheeks. The final whistle blew minutes later. New York United had won the championship. Cameras flashed, confetti fell, but Richard barely registered any of it. In the tunnel, a reporter shoved a microphone in his face. "Richard, the photos, how do you respond?" He kept walking, jaw locked. Inside the locker room, the mood was fractured. Some teammates clapped his shoulder and said, "Hell of a shot, Cap." Others avoided eye contact, pretending to tape their ankles or scroll phones. The coach pulled him aside. "You played like a champion tonight. The rest we'll handle tomorrow." Richard nodded, but the words felt hollow. Back at Edward's apartment, that night the city lights twinkled through the windows like nothing had changed. Edward poured 2 glasses of water and sat on the couch, waiting. Richard paced, still in his grass-stained uniform. "I didn't want it like this," he said finally. "Not in front of everyone. Not because someone hated me enough to sell us out." Edward reached for his hand. "You scored the goal of your life while the world booed you. That's who you are, Richard. Brave. Richard sank beside him, head in his hands. The weight of years of hiding pressed down all at once. He thought of his parents in California, still sending texts asking when he would bring home a girlfriend. He thought of his younger sister Mia, the only family member who knew and had begged him for years to live openly. The next morning the headline screamed across every sports site. Captain booed for being gay, wins title anyway. Social media exploded. Sponsors called the team's PR office in panic. Richard's phone buzzed nonstop, death threats mixed with messages of support from strangers. Edward made coffee and sat across from him. You don't have to decide anything today. Just breathe. But Richard already knew the decision was made the moment that ball left his foot. He could not go back into the closet. Not after 50,000 people had seen the truth in his eyes. That afternoon he met his agent at a quiet diner. They want you to issue a statement. Keep it vague. Say it's private. Richard shook his head. No more hiding. The agent sighed. This could cost you the captaincy. Maybe more. Richard met his gaze steadily. Then it costs me. But I'm done paying with pieces of myself. The drive to California took 2 days. Richard needed to face his parents before the media circus swallowed him whole. Edward offered to come, but Richard asked him to wait. This is something I have to do alone first. The family home in suburban San Diego looked exactly as it always had. Neat lawn, American flag, his old soccer trophies still gleaming on the mantel. His mother opened the door, eyes red from crying. His father stood behind her, arms crossed, face carved from stone. They sat at the kitchen table where Richard had eaten thousands of meals. His mother spoke first, voice trembling. We saw the news. The pictures. Is it true? Richard nodded. I'm gay, Mom. And I'm in love with Edward. He's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Silence stretched. His father finally spoke, voice low. We raised you to be a man. To carry on the family name. What about grandchildren? What about your career? Richard's throat tightened. I'm still the same son who scored the winning goal. Still the same brother who taught Mia to ride a bike. The only thing that changed is that I'm not lying anymore. His mother reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Tears fell freely now. We love you. It's just we don't understand. His father stared at the floor. I need time. Richard left that evening with a hollow ache in his chest, but also a strange lightness. He had spoken the truth out loud in the house where he grew up. That mattered. Back in New York, the team called an emergency meeting. The coach stood at the front. We support Richard. Anyone who doesn't can pack their gear. A few players shifted uncomfortably, but no one walked out. The veteran defender who had muttered the slur in the locker room cleared his throat. I was wrong. Sorry, Cap. Richard accepted the apology with a nod, though he knew trust would take time to rebuild. Edward waited outside the facility, leaning against his car. When Richard walked out, they embraced right there on the sidewalk, no longer caring who saw. For the first time, the kiss felt like freedom instead of fear. Training resumed, but the world had not finished testing him. Tabloids camped outside the practice ground. Opposing fans in the next league match chanted slurs from the first whistle. Richard played anyway, scoring twice and assisting once. After the game, he stood in front of the cameras voluntarily. I'm gay. I'm proud. And I'm still your captain. If that's a problem, take it up with the scoreboard. The clip went viral. Support poured in from athletes across sports, NBA stars, Olympians, even a few retired soccer legends. Yet the real battle was internal. Nights were hardest. Richard woke from dreams where the stadium booed forever, where Edward walked away because the pressure became too much. One evening he snapped at Edward over nothing, burnt toast, and immediately regretted it. I'm scared I'll lose everything, he admitted. Edward pulled him close. You already lost the hiding. Everything else we faced together. The misunderstanding came a week later. A gossip site published a story claiming Edward had sold the photos for money. Richard saw the headline first and felt the floor drop. He drove to the school where Edward taught and waited in the parking lot, chest tight with betrayal. When Edward emerged, smiling as always, Richard couldn't hold back. How could you? Edward's face drained of color. What are you talking about? The argument spilled into the car, voices rising until Edward finally pulled out his phone and showed the bank statements. Not a cent extra. The story was fabricated by the same ex-teammate who had leaked the pictures originally. Richard sat stunned, shame flooding him. I'm sorry. I let fear win again. Edward cupped his face. We both have scars, but we heal them together. That night, they lay awake talking until dawn, about the future, about maybe adopting someday, about the family they would build on their own terms. Richard felt something inside him shift permanently. The championship victory parade wound through Manhattan, confetti falling like snow. Richard rode on the lead float with the trophy raised high. Edward stood beside him, hand resting lightly on his shoulder for the whole route. Fans lined the streets, some still booing, most now cheering. A group of kids held a banner that read Captain Courage. Richard's eyes stung. He had spent years believing acceptance was impossible. Now it was unfolding in real time, imperfect and messy but real. His sister Mia flew in for the celebration. She hugged Edward like a brother she had known forever. Took you long enough, big bro. Their parents watched the parade on television from California. Later that evening his mother called. Your father cried when he saw you two together. He's still struggling, but he's trying. It was the closest thing to blessing Richard had ever received from him. At the team banquet, the coach presented Richard with a new armband embroidered with a small rainbow. You earned this twice, once as a player, once as a man. The room rose in applause. Even the players who had wavered now stood tall beside him. Richard looked across the table at Edward, who smiled that quiet, steady smile that had carried him through every storm. In that moment, the noise of the world finally quieted. Months later, the season ended and Richard signed a new contract. Same team, same captaincy, higher salary. Sponsors who had fled returned with rainbow campaigns. He and Edward bought a small house in the suburbs with a yard big enough for weekend soccer games with neighborhood kids. Life settled into a rhythm that felt earned. Morning runs together, evening dinners, quiet talks about the hard days and the better ones ahead. Richard still faced occasional slurs in away games, still received hateful mail. But he answered every positive letter from young fans struggling with their own identities. He started a foundation with Edward to support LGBTQ+ athletes in youth sports. The work healed something deep inside him. One crisp autumn afternoon, they stood on the same beach from their first vacation, waves rolling in. Richard dropped to one knee, simple ring in hand. Marry me. Not because the world finally allows it, but because I finally allow myself to want it. Edward's answer came with tears and laughter and the tightest embrace. As they walked back along the shore, hands linked, Richard thought about the boy who had once been terrified of his own heart. That boy had scored the goal that silenced a stadium and opened a future he never dared imagine. The journey had cost friendships, tested family, and nearly broken him. But every step had led here, to love without shame, to a life lived fully. Can one moment of courage truly change society's views on love? Or is acceptance always a battle that never ends?